I've just got back from a really awesome summer holiday in Greece, and a friend of mine was ribbing me a little bit. We were talking about next year, and he said something like, enjoy the business class while it lasts. Because this time next year, you'll be slumming it down the back with the rest of us. It made me laugh. There've been others. Aren't you going to be bored? That one comes up quite a lot. And my favorite, said completely sincerely, if everyone else is still working anyway, shouldn't you just stay and earn some more money? None of it's said to be cruel. These are people who like me. These are my friends. My parents are even further from it. They're not judging at all. They've watched what this job can do to me over the years, and I think they'd help me carry boxes out of the office themselves if it got me out sooner. Although, and I might be wrong about this, I suspect some part of them still wonders how their son does indeed walk away from a job paying as well as my one does. They'd never say it, of course. They'd probably barely even think it. But I've imagined them thinking it, which turns out is enough. And that's the strange part of all of this. Nobody is actually accusing me of anything. The worst anyone has said out loud is a joke about legroom on a flight. But there's a voice in my head that says it anyway. And it's my voice. It's still Identity Month on this podcast, by the way. This is episode 3 of 4. The first one was about earning. The second one was about competence. This one is about the accusation I keep bringing against myself for wanting to stop work and retiring early. This isn't about what anyone else thinks of me leaving. It's about what I think of me leaving, which it turns out is considerably less kind. You've built the career. You're building the portfolio. You're close to freedom. So what now? Welcome to Life After Enough. Money, meaning, and the life you design when work becomes optional. I'm Nick. I'm racing towards early retirement and figuring out who I become when the job no longer dictates what I do with my time. Let's get into it. Here's what the voice says when it's loud. You're not living up to your potential. You're giving up. And the one that actually gets under my skin, other people manage this job. Plenty of people would kill for this job. Why can't you just suck it up and hack it? But first, notice something about the volume. The actual humans in my life are gentle about this. Jokes about economy seats is about as rough as it gets. The voice in my head is not gentle at all. It's harsher than anything anyone has ever said to my face by quite a distance. And that's worth stopping on. If the harshest version of the accusation has never been said to me by another living person, where did I get it from? I didn't hear it anywhere. I wrote it. I've been ghostwriting lines for people who love me and then feeling kind of wounded by them. Last episode, I landed somewhere I thought had settled all of this, that competence is something you have, not something you are. I genuinely believed I'd learned that. Then this voice turns up, and I realized wasting your potential is also taking up a lot of emotional headroom. So let's take the accusation seriously, because the slightly uncomfortable thing about this voice is that it isn't really lying. I grew up in a small town in the UK. School was fine. I thought I was actually reasonably good at it, but my grades said I was average. And looking back, there wasn't really much structure to any of it. Not the education, not what came afterwards. Things mostly just happened to me. Nobody sat me down with a map and a plan. Then, university. Something in me caught fire. I had proper structure for the first time, proper direction, and a bucket load of ambition. It turned out that with actual fuel, I could go far. Top of the year in exams, a first in my law degree, a distinction in the legal practice course, then a training contract at a prestigious American law firm, which, if you described it to the kid getting average grades in that town, would have sounded like someone else's life. If you heard the first episode of Identity Month, you know what that path was to me. The golden ticket. Not law itself, but the earning power it unlocked. But here's the voice's favorite fact. A couple of years ago, I was offered a promotion worth around another $100,000 a year, and I turned it down. Now, think about what that actually proves. It proves I'm not even running this machine at full capacity. I've deliberately kept one hand on the brake, and it still pays me a good salary. The ceiling is above where I'm standing, and I can see it, and I'm choosing to climb down the ladder instead. People will tell you helpfully, about sunk cost. 20 years of training isn't a reason to do 20 more of it. And they're right, as far as it goes. But sunk cost doesn't describe this. And I think that's where the standard advice bounces off. A sunk cost is dead money, gone. The whole point of it is that it can't come back. But when you walk away from your job, this isn't that. The earning power isn't sunk. It's actually sitting right there, live and still producing. And it would keep producing for another decade if I let it. Walking away from something dead is, well, easy. Walking away from something that's still working, that's the version nobody writes the tidy advice for. So when the voice says squandering, it's not exaggerating for effect. On the numbers, that's simply an accurate description of the decision, which is exactly why the guilt won't move. But squandering isn't the accusation that hurts the most. I could probably make peace with an expensive decision. The one that hurts is the second one. Why can't you just hack it? Because plenty of people do. All around me, every day. Some of them even seem happy, or they're doing a really good impression of being happy at the very least. Whenever I look at them, the voice in my head goes, see, it's doable. The job is survivable. Other people survive it. So the problem isn't the job, the problem is you. I don't have a quick comeback to that because parts of it are absolutely true. The Sunday dread is mine and it's old. I've had it for as long as I can remember, long before there was anything concrete to dread. I did a whole episode on how the Sunday scaries show up in my life a few weeks ago, so I won't rehash that again now. But it isn't new and it isn't a phase. Somewhere along the line, I lost the ability to pretend Monday was fine, and I've never got that back. And to be fair to the little voice in my head, I know exactly when the ability went. I had 4 years as my own boss. 4 years of setting my own hours, of taking a holiday without asking anyone's permission, of nobody above me in the org chart because there was no org chart. Once you've worked like that, going back inside a corporate life feels kind of like going back in prison. And it's genuinely hard. I knew it would be, but I went back anyway, eyes open, because the cash pile needed building, and this was the fastest and safest way I knew how to do it. That was the deal I made with myself, and I've kept it. But the mark doesn't wash off. The prison never stopped being a prison. Now, here's what the voice does with that information. It converts a preference into a character flaw. Everyone else copes. What's wrong with you? And once hating your job has been filed under a personal weakness rather than under information, you can't act on it without proving it right. And notice this is a different fear from last episode. That one was about being bad at whatever comes next. This one is about failing at the thing I'm still in. Leaving becomes the proof that you can't hack it, but staying becomes the only way to prove it's wrong. And that's the trap. I've been standing in it for quite some time now. Quick one before we continue. I send a weekly email every Monday morning that goes deeper than the podcast. It's not a recap, it's a separate idea, usually something more personal, plus a question to sit with for the week. It's free, it's one email, and you can sign up at lifeafterenough.com. Link is in the show notes. Okay, back to it. Now, here's what's supposed to fix all of this, and didn't. The number is done. I hit it more than 2 years ago. Since then, I've kept working and built a buffer on top of the number, because apparently that's just what I do these days. There's an income floor under our life now, all covered without me lifting a finger again. Every question that money can answer has then been answered. Am I safe? Yes. Can I live well? Also yes. I've checked the sums ad nauseum, and the voice didn't get one notch quieter. I want to sit on that for a second. For years, I assumed the guilt was, underneath everything else, financial. That at some size of number, some size of buffer, it would dissolve away. Pretty reasonable theory, but it was wrong. The question I'd been answering was, can you afford to stop? What the voice was actually saying was, you're wasting it. And waste has nothing to do with need. You can waste something you don't need. That's practically the definition of waste. Back in the first episode of Identity Month, I said the number replaces the payslip you can see, but not the one you can't. I thought that was the whole story. Turns out the number has a second blind spot. It can't replace what the job gives you, and it can't give you permission to stop. Different problem. Same useless spreadsheet though, so every extra dollar in the buffer answered a question the voice never asked. If you're doing this too, adding margin to the margin, waiting for the spreadsheets to finally produce a permission slip, it's worth asking whether your voice is about money at all. Mine wasn't. The spreadsheet can prove you don't need the money, but it can't prove you're allowed to stop. So if the voice isn't asking about money, what's it asking about? I went looking because this is on my mind, and I didn't much like what I found. There's an idea in psychology that I want to share with you. And it's that we don't carry just one picture of ourselves. We carry the person we are, we carry the person we'd love to be, and we carry a third one, the person we think we're obliged to be. This one's called the ought self, as in the ought to self. The National Library of Medicine defines it as this. The ought self is the version of you defined by duties, obligations, and responsibilities. It's rooted in self-discrepancy theory, and it represents the traits you believe you should possess based on external expectations, cultural norms, and morals, rather than your personal desires. The useful bit is that the different gaps produce different feelings. Fall short of the person you'd love to be, and you get disappointed. Fall short of the person you're obliged to be, and you get guilt. Guilt. That's the one I've got, which tells me the voice isn't measuring me against my dream. It's measuring me against a duty. And when I look at what my ought self is actually obliged to do, it's very specific. It's use the capacity, earn, climb, convert the potential into money and status every year forever. That's the entire scale. Kindness isn't on it. Generosity isn't on it, and I do a decent amount of both, and it registers as nothing, 0 points. Being a good son, a good husband, and a decent friend. The scale doesn't even have a column for any of that. So where did that scale come from? Well, the same place the ambition came from, the same town. Where I grew up, potential meant one thing: getting out and getting paid. And look, at age 18, that scale did right by me. It did get me out, and I'm not sneering at it. It was the correct scale for that stretch of the journey. But this is where it joins up with everything else this month, because that scale isn't really a scale. It's an identity holding the measuring tape. The earner from Identity Month Episode 1, the competent one from Identity Month Episode 2, this is them showing up again. And this time, they've written the rules for what counts as a life well spent. Rules under which, conveniently, the only way to be a worthwhile person is to keep working at your high-paying job. Of course, it always comes back with the same answer. The thing doing the measuring is the same identity that stands to lose everything if I stop. The voice sounds like a neutral assessment of my potential. It's nothing of the sort. It's a 20-year-old identity fighting for its survival, and you're wasting your potential is the best weapon it has, because it sounds like ethics. That's what took me the longest time to see. The guilt dressed up as a kind of morality. Underneath, it's an identity that just doesn't want to die. So what's the actual move here? Because I promised myself this episode wouldn't just describe the guilt and leave it sitting there. The move is not to argue with the voice inside your head. I've tried that, and it doesn't work. On its own scale, it wins every single time. Walk away from peak earnings, and the earnings scale calls it waste because that's the only word it has. You won't win that argument. The question is the scale itself. The first crack in it, for me, is this. Having a capacity to achieve is not the same as owing it your life. I can be genuinely good at this, rare at it even, and still be allowed to stop. The second crack is what I've done to the word retirement. I've actually stopped using it, in my own head at least. June 2027 is no longer this huge cliff edge, and it isn't the end of the story. It's just merely the end of a chapter, the end of this job, this way of working. What comes after can take 100 different shapes, and some of them will probably involve earning again. A sabbatical that turns into something, consulting, maybe one day on things I actually find interesting, or none of that. The point is, the door stays open, and it's absolutely remarkable how much quieter the accusation gets when leaving stops meaning never and starts meaning not this. The third crack is arithmetic, and it's my favorite. The floor is built, which means everything I earn from here on is upside. All of it. Fun money. And on the other side of a floor, small money becomes enormous. Even a market stall pulling in $1,000 a month is 2 business class flights home to the UK every year, or an expedition somewhere daft. For 20 years, $1,000 was nice, but probably a bit of a rounding error. Now it's a really awesome adventure budget. What I don't have yet is the replacement sentence. The new one, the one that goes where you're wasting your potential, used to sit. I know some of what has to be in it, that the ticket got me out and I'm grateful and it's allowed me to have done this job, that whatever I do next has to pay me in something other than money, because money is already settled. But the exact words aren't finished. I thought about pretending otherwise for this episode, and it felt like exactly the kind of tidy ending this month is supposed to be against. So I'm still drafting, and I'll tell you when it's done. If any of this is ringing bells, here's some homework. Think about the things that play in your head when you think seriously about leaving your job. Then ask 2 questions. First, whose voice is that? Because here's my bet. The real people around you are gentler than the version in your head. And if the harshest sentence is one that no living person has ever actually said to you, and you wrote it, same as me, well, you can edit that sentence as well. And then second, what is it measuring? What's on its scale, and who installed it, and when? Because there's a decent chance it was installed by a younger you for a stretch of the journey you've already finished. It might have been exactly right back then, but that doesn't make it right for now. Check whether it has a column for the things you actually care about at this point in your life. If it doesn't, the problem was never your potential. That's 3 pieces of the armor now, if you're keeping count: earning, competence, and whatever this one is, potential, duty, the ought self. 1 piece left, and it's the one I've been putting off. If you want somewhere concrete to start, I've built a free quiz called the Freedom Score. 3 minutes. It looks at the 5 things that actually decide whether you're ready to leave your corporate life or not. And money is only one of them. The link is in the description. Next episode is the check-in, and it closes out Identity Month. See you then. Thanks for listening to Life After Enough, a podcast about money, meaning, and the life you design when work becomes optional. If this episode made you rethink your future, share it with someone who's starting to question the script too. You can follow the show wherever you get your podcasts. I'm your host, Nick, and I'll see you next week as we keep building a life that's truly ours.